This is the Louie T Network. Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Draft zone.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome. You are in the lab room. Of course, I am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. This is the 2015 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where I aim to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2015 NFL Draft by simply looking at each and every selection made by said team in their draft, giving each and every single pick a grade by using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we get an aggregate score by totaling up all of the selections made in the draft, applying bonuses when necessary, dividing by the number of picks made by that team in the draft, and voila, we come up with a final score. And then we move on to the next team in the process, picked by you, the viewers at home. All you have to do to be up next, to have your team be the next up in the series, is simply be the first to leave a post in the comment section of this and future videos stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. I don't care how you phrase it. You guys have done a magnificent job at having those two components in your comments and your posts. And so we really haven't had much of an issue, but we did have a hiccup with this very Cincinnati Bengals team. And really, this Bengals team could have been done twice already. They were one of the three finalists to go first. You know, I start off the series with the team that I perceived to have the best draft at the very beginning. It was between the Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, and the Cincinnati Bengals. I literally had the Cincinnati Bengals just about done, and then I changed my mind and went with the Saints. And so put the Saints out first, and I put the Cincinnati Bengals back on the shelf. And then one of your beloved members of your family had the Cincinnati Bengals first, got to the comment section first, was ready to rock and roll, and forgot the phrase next. I'm not going to put him on blast because that's my boy. But it happens, mistakes happen. But so Cincinnati had a chance to go top 5. They don't. All of a sudden now we're 20-something teams into the mix, and the Bengals are now finally being done. Better late than never, right? Absolutely. So let's jump into their draft. And before we do, I want to say this is a big year for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not because of this draft, but because Andy Dalton is skating on thin ice, and Marvin Lewis has about one more year to not get out of the first round of the postseason before he gets canned. I think they're running out of patience in Cincinnati, and rightfully so. He's had over a decade worth of time to build this Cincinnati program into the type of organization that he has wanted to. And he's done a really good job of managing malcontents. He's done a really good job of bringing talented football players into this team. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are top 5 in this league in drafting over the last 5 years or so. This isn't a talent issue with this team. They're never void of talent. To me, they're one of the more talented teams each and every single year before the injuries take effect and things happen throughout the course of the season. But this is one of the most talented football teams year in, year out, because they win in the draft. The problem isn't talent. The problem is always execution with this team. And more importantly, Andy Dalton is at the forefront of that. His lack of execution in the postseason has really held this team up and really hindered their progress in the AFC conference as a whole. I'll tell you this much: Andy has earned the right to get an opportunity to defend himself and play regular season football. But if he struggles, this team struggles, Marvin Lewis does not have enough leeway to say to Andy Dalton, you have a chance to get it done. If this team comes out of the blocks 2-4 stumbling, I think it's time to pull the trigger and put A.J. McCarron in the game. I'm a huge A.J. McCarron guy. He doesn't lack for confidence. It's borderline cockiness on his part, but I love it. I love his bravado, and I love the fact that he's a winner. He feels like he's going to be a great quarterback in this league, and I'd love to see him get an opportunity. So if Andy can't get it done, Andy's already proven to me that he's not a winner. If he can't get it done, put somebody else in that probably can. And if you're Marvin Lewis, you're looking to save your job And so you cannot allow Andy Dalton to drag you down. This draft isn't going to save your life, okay? You've been drafting well for the last 5 years. This draft isn't going to come in and change the game for you. You've got a lot of good players that you're about to bring onto your football team, but that's not the answer. The answer is with the team that you already have, with the players you already have. You have a talented roster. It's time to execute. It's time for the quarterback position to step up to the level that the rest of this team is playing at. And so let's jump into this 2015 draft because you're getting more talented players to help you for the future. This team does it the right way. It's all about execution on the field. And we start in the first round, 21st overall selection, offensive tackle out of Texas A&M. Cedric Ogbuehi is the pick. This is a kid that bought his time at Texas A&M. He's going to have to buy his time in the National Football League as well. But he's no stranger to waiting his turn. Remember, Luke Joeckel was at left tackle at one point at Texas A&M, and Jake Matthews was at right tackle. Luke Joeckel comes off the board, second overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 seasons ago. And so Jake Matthews takes his spot at left tackle, and Cedric Ogbuehi finally gets his opportunity at right tackle. Then Jake Matthews comes off the board, number 6 overall to the Falcons a season ago. And so then Cedric Ogbuehi gets his opportunity to slide over to the premier position on the offensive line, left tackle. And I thought he did an amazing job until he got injured. We'll talk about the injury a little bit later on. But this is a kid extremely talented and is really going to help this Cincinnati Bengals team transition from one of the most underrated tackles in the league in Andrew Whitworth. He's getting up there in age, but I thought he was remarkable a season ago. And that's why you're able to do something like this. Spend a first-round pick on a guy that probably won't help you this season because you got Andrew Whitworth still playing at an extremely high level for you at left tackle. You got Andre Smith still at right tackle, so you feel good about your tackle situation right now. You don't have to rush anybody anywhere, but you're ready to pull the trigger on 2 brand new tackles. You gave Andre Smith maybe a little bit more money than you really wanted to a season ago, and wouldn't be surprised if you felt like a cheaper option was able to come in and get the job done. You drafted 2 tackles. We'll talk about both of them here. But Cedric Ogbuehi, 6'5", 306-pound offensive tackle stud. If you ask me to draw up a picture-perfect definition of what an offensive tackle is supposed to look like, how he's supposed to move, I'm drawing up Cedric Ogbuehi, and it's not even close. This guy has the temperament, the demeanor, the athleticism, the body, the build, the movement skills of a Hall of Fame type player. It's all about how he responds to this treatment from his injury and how he's able to transition from the college game to the pros, but everything is there. Let's jump into his pros. He's athletically gifted. He gets out of his stance. His kick slide is velvety smooth. This guy is athletic. He can move from left to right, right to left. He's extremely long. He's got sweet feet. That's the next pro. His feet are among the best I've seen in a very long time at the tackle position. You're not going to out-athletic this guy. You're not going to just put a supremely gifted athlete in front of him and say, hey, beat him and just beat him off of sheer athleticism. It's not happening. His feet are good enough to move with anybody. If he loses a one-on-one battle, it was because of a technique flaw, because he made a mistake, not because he's lacking in athleticism. He's gifted in his athleticism. His feet are second to none in this draft. This guy is extremely talented from an athletic standpoint. He recovers well. And when you're a supremely gifted athlete like Cedric Ogbuehi is, you're very, very able to recover from being beaten. If you make a false step, if you make a mistake, if a guy jumps the snap count, he knows the snap count and is able to get out of his stance before you are, you can still recover. That's what separates the great tackles from the good tackles. The elite from the great is the fact that they can recover when they're beaten. They're never out of a play because they're still long enough, they're still athletic enough, they're still active and strong enough to get back into play and rebound after being beaten initially. He's no different. This is why I feel like he is one of the best players from the offensive line perspective in this draft. He gets to the second level. And when you're athletic, I already told you he's athletic, so that's not a surprise to you that he gets to the second level. He makes it look easy, and he's a seek and destroy guy. I love seek and destroy offensive linemen because they get to the second level and they're looking for someone to blow up. And he's one of those guys that puts a crosshair on a defender, locks them up, and gets them out of the way and is able to create rushing lanes for whomever has the football. He anchors down. He's not one of these guys you got to worry about getting driven back. He doesn't give up any space Once he gets into his stance and is able to anchor down, you're not going anywhere. If he gets his hands on you, he's got long arms, he's got vines. Once he gets his arms on you and he's able to sit down, forget about it, you're done. Try again next time. He's got a potent punch. And I think, to me, if you want to be an elite offensive lineman, that's the easiest way to do so, is to have a potent punch, because that punch can easily offset any other deficiencies you have, especially if you've got long arms. If you've got a potent punch and you can move, you can keep a guy at bay, okay? And so putting that punch on somebody is the easiest way to displace them, to have them disoriented, off balance, and no longer a threat to get to the quarterback on any given play. And he has a potent punch that knocks guys off balance, displaces them, and is able to keep him in a great position to hold down his block on any given play. He's got the long arm of the law going on, and I told you he's got long vines for arms. It allows him to extend that potent punch. It allows him to get into the chest of the defender before they can get into his, which allows him to really control the action. When you can get your hands on a guy first, you're able to redirect them and you're able to control what happens next. And so his long arms are another vital, important reason why he has the ability to become, in 3 years, one of the premier tackles in all of the National Football League. It's all about, like I said before, him coming back and how he responds to this injury. He's versatile. I just talked about that. Started at right tackle, moved to left tackle, can play guard if necessary. This isn't a guard though. You don't even need to have a discussion about putting this guy at guard. He's too good of a tackle to waste him at guard. He's going to play tackle at the next level, and I feel like he's a left tackle in the making. You go to his cons. I told you he's not going to lose off of sheer athleticism. He's going to lose off of technique flaws. One of his biggest glaring technique flaws is he'll have bad sets. And what I mean by that is he'll come out of his stance and for some unexplainable reason, he will take 2 steps forward, false steps. For what reason, I can't tell you. And he'll move forward and he'll allow a guy to come right around the edge. I don't know if he thought that it was a quick throw or what he was supposed to be getting out on the play, but if you turn on the tape against Mississippi State, he has about 2 or 3 bad sets in that game where he comes out of his stance, he's fine, then he takes 2 steps forward and allows the guy to go right around him, and then he's chasing him. It's too late, he's at the quarterback. And I'm like, how'd you do that? And so that's unexplainable. For some inexplicable reason, he has some bad sets. I don't know why. That's easily fixed. I'm not really worried about it, but it was something that I just scratched my head and asked myself, what are you doing? Why are you taking false steps forward and allowing guys to get around you when you're the superior athlete here? You should be winning these matchups, play in, snap out. And for some reason, he was having bad sets. Guys were getting by him. That's not who he is as a football player. That's just something he's got to clean up. Sometimes, and to me, this is a bigger issue than that. Sometimes he's late with his hands, okay? For a guy with long arms, for a guy that is as strong as he is, as athletic as he is, all you gotta do is get your hands up. Put him up in the ready position. As soon as a guy is ready to get close, as soon as he's in your striking distance, within your radius, stretch out those arms, engage, and lock him up. And sometimes he'll have his hands down and he'll allow a guy to get into his chest, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way a 6'3" defender should be getting into your chest before you stretch out your 6'5" frame and get into his. And so he's got late hands sometimes, and it allows the defender to get into his chest and cause problems, put him on skates. And again, he shouldn't be on skates. He shouldn't be on skates. He's too good of a football player. But when you don't have your hands ready, hand down, you know the rules. This doesn't just apply to basketball. Hand down, man down. You leave your hands down and the defender is able to get his hands in your chest, you are in some trouble. If that player is of any caliber, you're going down, and you're going down hard. And I saw it with Cedric Ogbuehi a couple of times on tape where hands were down, guys got in his chest, drove him back into the backfield, discarded him, got to the quarterback, made plays. So if he gets his hands up, there's not a problem here. But I saw him with his hands down and him late too many times to the party. He's too good of a football player to have that happen on a consistent basis. That's something he's got to clean up. And of course, the elephant in the room, injury, torn ACL, about 7 games into the season, tears his ACL, missed the rest of the season, of course, missed all the offseason activities. probably not going to play for the Cincinnati Bengals this year, but doesn't need to play for the Bengals this year. Again, you've got enough good football players along that offensive line to feel comfortable with this guy redshirting for a year. And then next year, you'll be ready to slide him in, and he'll probably come back, not miss a beat, and be one of your best and most productive players out of this draft class. You look at the first round, 21st overall selection, offensive tackle out of Texas A&M, Cedric Ogbuehi, for me, is a absolute deep drive to right field, way back. It's hit hard. It's hit deep. Out of here. A home run in the first round. This guy is a legit top 10 talent in this draft. The injury saw him fall to 21. And for a lot of guys, an injury like this drops him out of the first round. He's too talented for that to happen to him. That's why he's a 21st overall selection to the Cincinnati Bengals. You go to the second round, 53rd overall selection, offensive lineman out of Oregon, Jake Fisher is the pick. So we go back-to-back tackles. Don't know if the Cincinnati Bengals have any inkling to move this guy to guard, but I think he's more than adequate at tackle, and I'd love to try him there first before I have any ideas of moving this guy around. But let's talk about his pro. 6'6", 306-pound professional tackle. I call him a professional tackle because he gets the job done and he makes it look clean and efficient. And he's got a mean streak though. Let's start there. And you know how I am about my offensive lineman and my mean streaks, okay, with the nasty disposition. He's one of those guys. He's not a nice guy. And I say this all the time, and I've already said this, and I'm gonna continue to say it because it's a true statement. Ain't nothing nice about this game we love called football, man. Professional tackle football is the meanest, nastiest, most physically demanding game there is to play, and we love it. And we love it because it's physical and guys are getting after it, and there's a train wreck, a collision on every single play. Nothing's nice out there. Nothing is nice. You gotta win, and the way to win is to be the meanest guy, the toughest guy on the block. And so he's a mean guy, okay? And I'll give you an example. Oregon, I watched so many tapes, they all run together at this point, but he's blocking right around the goal line, and he gets a guy, he drives him 2 yards into the end zone. It's a touchdown, plays over, you know, guys in the end zone. And I'm pretty sure Jake Fisher is aware of this, that the guy's in the end zone. I mean, really, he's got his guy 2 yards into the end zone. At what point do you need to continue to drive him and he's not making a play 2 yards in the end zone, okay? You just need to, the front of the ball just needs to break the plane of the goal line for it to be a touchdown. That guy's not affecting the play 2 yards into the end zone, but Jake Fisher doesn't care. He drives him another 2 yards, and then right as the official is about to blow the whistle and signal touchdown, he gives this guy an incredible shove, throws him on the ground, and I couldn't do anything but just smile like a proud papa whose son finally made it. I mean, I just looked at Jake and I said, you sly devil, you nasty son of a gun. Jake turned around and gave me a little wink like, yeah, man, that's what I do. And from that point on, I looked at Jake, and Jake was just doing a whole bunch of nasty stuff. Pancaking guys, putting a little bit of extra syrup on top. Just being extremely physical for no reason, and I love it. Give me more of it. And so, I love his nasty streak. He finishes blocks, and that's pretty much what I just spoke to. He pancakes a guy, he gets on top of them, they're not getting up. He finishes blocks. Normally when he gets his hands on a guy, he's able to keep them out of the play. Nothing makes me more upset. Nothing perturbs me more, and it is a pet peeve of mine with an offensive lineman, than a guy that engages and then disengages and allows the guy that he already blocked in the play to come in and make a play. That's not a problem with Jake Fisher. You don't have to worry about that. He's physical in the run game. I already talked about that. He moves guys. He creates a new line of scrimmage. He's physical. Yada, yada, yada. The guy is legit in the run game, and he's physical. And I just told you, he's got a mean streak. All those things run together, and that's what you gotta love about this selection. Technically sound. For all of that I said, for him being a bruiser and a mauler in the run game, he's still technically sound. He's still one of these guys that gets out of his, and that's why I call him a professional, because he can wear the business suit, tie, look clean, but he can also take that off, be grimy and gritty, hasn't shaved in over 2 weeks, and come out and get nasty, roll his sleeves up and get dirty and physical. So I call him a professional because whatever you need for that day. If it's a nasty day outside, it's wet, sloppy, and nasty, he can go ahead, take the suit off, get nasty, roll up the sleeves, and get physical. If it's a finesse game against the Colts, inside, indoors, and he needs to make sure he's able to stay in front of a speed rusher, he can put the suit back on, get professional on you, and get here. And he mirrors well. That's the next pro. Go ahead and lump these in together. Technically sound. He's getting out of his stance into his set. And he's here. He's ready to block hands or ready to go. And he mirrors. You know that mirror drill at the combine where you're doing the MC Hammer shuffle, the MC Hammer typewriter, and you're here. Jake Fisher's there all day long, man. You can go ahead and try. You're not getting by him though. You're going to have to come with some kind of move, or you're going to have to come with some kind of toughness and some strength. We'll talk about what gives him fits later, but this guy has a lot. And then last but not least, his final pro, he's a typical Oregon offensive lineman. And what I mean by that, he's an athletic guy. Now, is he Kyle Long, the last Oregon offensive lineman to come into the league and be successful? No. Kyle Long was one of these exceptions to the rule. He's a tremendous, phenomenal athlete, is Kyle Long. I don't want to tell you that Jake Fisher is that, because he's not. But what Jake Fisher is a very capable athlete that can get to the second level, do a number of things, and he's just what you figure would come out of Oregon. An athletic lineman, no nonsense, physical guy. A lot of people think because you go to Oregon and you've got a lot of team speed and that these guys are finesse. What you have to know about Chip Kelly is that he's a physical head coach. He wants to run the football, he wants to be physical, and these type of players, they exude that, okay? They exemplify what Oregon is all about. Jake Fisher, no different. Just because he's athletic and he's gifted doesn't mean he's not physical. Don't take his kindness for weakness. Don't take his athleticism as a weakness that he can't be tough, because he can mix it up with the best of them. And so you go to his cons. Strong, long-armed defenders are problematic for him. So guys that give him fits are the guys with long limbs that are strong enough to get their hands on him before he can get their hands on them and be able to redirect them, get them out of the way, and get to the backfield. I saw that on a number of occasions where guys were long and they were strong, able to stick that one, and you know, and at no point is two arms better than one, especially as a defender. One arm is always better than two because you can get more extension on one. You can drive a guy back if you're strong enough, and I saw guys do that to Jake Fisher. And so strong, long-armed defenders give him trouble. He just needs to have better technique. You're 6'6", use your length to your advantage and don't allow them to get into your chest. Knock those hands down if necessary and get into their chest and win at the line of scrimmage. If he misses his initial punch, he's done. And so he's one of these guys that he's not necessarily a lunger, but he puts so much emphasis in that punch. He packs a mean one, okay? If he hits you with it, much like Cedric Ogbuehi, if he hits you with it, you could be in some serious trouble. You're probably not gonna make a play on that particular down. On that snap, probably not gonna impact the play if he hits you with that punch, because he's putting a lot behind it. But if he misses, much like a boxer throwing a really big punch, he's susceptible, he leaves himself open, and anytime you're open for interpretation, I'm gone. I'm out the back door, man. Next time, you got to be better than that. So I think that's something that he's going to have to be better at, is not so much winding up with the punch, but having it be quick and rapid. Boom, 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 and not so much, you know, throwing a Ryu fireball or a Dragon Ball Z fireball. You know, I don't need you loading up for that. I just need you to hit a guy, keep him in front of you, and lock him up. So at the end of the day, though, I'm just as enamored with this pick as I was in the first round. And so in the second round, 53rd overall selection, offensive lineman out of Oregon, Jake Fisher for me. Is it hard? It's it deep. You can put it on the board. Yeah. So I'm right. Back-to-back jacks for the Cincinnati Bengals along the offensive line. You build from within, you win in the trenches in this league. Cincinnati Bengals doing it the right way, getting two big, beefy offensive linemen that are athletes that can get it done at the NFL level. You go to the third round, 85th overall selection, tight end out of Rutgers. Tyler Kroft is the selection. 6'5", 246-pound tight end. He's an athlete, okay? 4'6", 40 with a 10-foot broad jump lets you know that this guy has some explosion and he can run, he can move, but that's not the end-all be-all of Tyler Kroft. He's a pass-catching threat. You can catch a football with the best of them. Didn't see a lot of him last year because he was dealing with some nagging injuries, but this guy is a talented football player. And Christian Fourier, who is a tight end coach in the league, said that this guy is one of the best route runners in this entire draft class. So that's a lofty statement from a guy that played over 10 years in the National Football League. He's seen tight ends run a route or two in this league, so he knows what it takes to get the job done, and he feels like this guy is among the best in the league at running routes in this draft, I should say. And I just mentioned runs precise routes. That was the next pro. I've already explained that. He can extend away from his frame to catch the football, and at 6'5", 246, he's got a lot of frame there, a lot of catch radius to work with. So you can throw it up here, he can go out and extend. And I watched that Notre Dame bowl game from 2013 because you know when you deal with a guy with a myriad of injuries in 2014, you need to go back and see when he was at his best. And 2013 to me was a lot better for him than 2014 was. And you also had more stability at the quarterback position in 2013. So I looked at that tape and he was catching the football everywhere, away from his frame, did a good job of catching on the run, not really having to gather himself to catch the football. He was running, ball was high, he didn't even leave his feet. Stretched up, grabbed it, and kept running. One smooth motion. I love that. I hate when guys leave their feet for the football unnecessarily. It's almost like a defense mechanism. You think you're going to get hit, so you jump, leave your feet, so you can kind of impact and cushion the blow a little bit better. Some guys who have trouble catching the football with their hands like to jump and catch it with their body. He didn't have to do that. He can stretch away from his frame, catch the football, and not lose stride. He competes as a blocker in the run and the pass game. So he's a guy that I trust. I feel comfortable with him being out there and blocking. Could he be a little bit better? Sure, but I don't think it's a detriment at all. I don't think this is something that's going to keep him from getting snaps on the field. If he picks up the playbook and he shows the athleticism that I saw in 2013 and a little bit of in 2014, I don't see why this guy won't be playing day one. And if you have the injuries at the tight end position like he did last year, this guy will definitely see the field and be productive for you because he can run block, he can pass block as well. I think it's adequate enough for him to be on the field early on in his Bengals career. You go to his next pro, versatility. They put him everywhere along that offense, whether it was flexed out wide as a tight end, he was in the slot flexed, or he was at the traditional inline tight end position, H-back in the backfield. They had this guy all over the place. He's a good enough athlete to do that, so he's a very versatile football player. And his last pro, when you sum all of that up, he's a balanced tight end. This isn't a guy, that's why you take him in the third round, because he is a balanced tight end. And we made a lot about this tight end class not being deep and not being able to get a lot of guys with substance in this draft. Here's a guy right here in the third round that I feel like is a very balanced tight end. Can catch, can block, can do all of the things you need him to do to be successful at the next level. And I say that the Bengals really did good for themselves getting a guy like Tyler Kroft in the third round. You go to his cons. There was a huge dip in production from 2013 to 2014. Now, I did mention some injuries, but to me, the biggest problem with him was they switched conferences. They were in the American Conference in 2013, so you're playing the likes of UConn and all these other teams that they're not getting the best athletes in football. Maybe basketball, but not football. Then you go to the Big Ten and you step up tremendously in the level of competition. Now you're playing Ohio State. Now you're playing Michigan. Now you're playing upper echelon teams. You're not playing Tulane anymore. You're playing much better competition. No more Memphis for you. Now you got to play a team like Michigan State. So good luck with that. So I thought that was probably more so the reason for the dip in production than him having injuries. Who am I to say? I can't confirm nor deny that. I'm just saying that was the thing that jumped out at the most at me. And if that was the problem, well, you're getting even more competition. The level is increasing even more. What are you going to do now that you're at the highest level there is? Injured ankle is the last pro, and we know how ankle injuries can go. We know how injuries in general are. They can be nagging or they can go away and never rear their ugly head again. He missed the rest of the season, last game of the season, hurt his ankle severely against North Carolina, didn't play in the bowl game, wasn't able to participate in a lot of the off-season activity. So this is a guy dealing with ankle issues, and so let's hope he's able to clean that up and be ready for the start of camp. I believe he will be, but in the 3rd round, 85th overall selection, tight end out of Rutgers, Tyler Kroft for me is a double. That suspect drop in production makes me a little nervous. I'm going to reserve judgment there. I don't think this is any indication that this guy can't get it done. I reserve the right to see what happens with him, because that makes me a little nervous that the level of competition raised and his numbers declined. Some of that has to do with the quarterback play, some of that maybe with some injuries. Who am I to say? We'll see what happens with this guy, but for right now, he is a double. Next 3rd round selection, and this is why the Cincinnati Bengals win in the draft. They got 2 3rd round picks, 2 4th round picks. Try to stay away from backloading your draft with 6th and 7th rounders. The meat and potatoes of your draft come from rounds 3 to 5. They got 4 picks in the 3rd and 4th rounds, and they have a 5th rounder as well. So 5 picks, the meat and potatoes of their draft right there. That's how you win in the draft game, while the Cincinnati Bengals are one among the best in the league. You go to their 2nd 3rd round selection, 99th overall selection, linebacker out of TCU, Paul Dawson is the selection. This is a guy that bombed out at the combine, and he took to Twitter to voice his displeasure with a lot of people criticizing him for running a 4.9 340. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Let's jump into his pros though. Instincts. This guy plays with a level of instincts that will allow him to excel at the next level. It was the reason why he was so dynamic at TCU. His instincts are among the best in this draft class, and that's why this guy was a 3rd round selection. Flows to the football. He gets to the football and he finds ways, and I want to lump this in with another one of his pros. Methodical and calculated. He doesn't take false steps. He doesn't overreact to play action fakes or any of that stuff. He's very methodical in his approach. He's not going to wow you initially with his initial burst, because he wants to diagnose the play. You see some guys just take off going, and whether it's a run, pass, they're just gone. He's not that guy. He's going to make sure he diagnoses the play correctly, and then he's going to take off. And when he does, it's like he shot out of a cannon. And so that's when the instincts kick in, because sometimes he can be a little slow to pull the trigger. But again, Mike Mayock already told me, hey, don't be quick to judge these linebackers on how fast they pull the trigger, because you don't know what they're being told out there. You don't know how they're being coached. So I don't do that anymore. I just want to see how you produce, and this guy produced at a very high level at TCU. He slips and avoids blockers. That's the next pro. Notice the lingo, notice the terminology I use. He slips and avoids blockers. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. He finds ways to the football though, and he avoids blockers. He's able to slip them, get to the ball carrier, get them on the ground. Tackling machine. Tackling machine. This is a guy that, like I said, flows to the football, heavy instincts, and slips and avoids blockers. All of those things combined puts you in a position to make plays and get guys on the ground. That's why he's a tackling machine. Over 130 tackles last season for the Horned Frogs of Texas Christian. And so I'm going to talk about his numbers in 2014 because they were staggering a little bit later on as a pro. But just know that this guy is a tackling machine. He's a playmaker, and this is what I love about him. And this was the thing that made him upset when people started questioning his athleticism, because he said, look, you can sit here, I'm not a track guy. That was the first thing he said, I'm not a track guy. Okay, so me running a 4.93 has nothing to do with the ability for me to make plays on the field. I'm a playmaker, okay? And as long as I'm making plays on the field, you can't say nothing to me. This guy was a playmaker. You go turn on that Oklahoma tape, late in that ball game. Oklahoma has a little bit of momentum. TCU right there with him. Paul Dawson jumps in the air, times up a play. This is an ex-wide receiver in high school, so he can catch the football. They throw a pass. He reads the eyes of the quarterback. Shuffle, strife. Reads the eyes of the quarterback. Probably was supposed to be blitzing on the play besides the dropping the coverage. Underneath the route, picks off the pass literally at the line of scrimmage in one swoop, one fell motion, takes off to the end zone, touchdown. It was gorgeous. It's the type of play you make when you're the guy on your team, and he was the guy on that TCU defense. And you look at the West Virginia game, they were reeling in that game, okay? They were reeling. They were down 27-14 on the road against West Virginia. West Virginia was looking to go in for the kill shot. Quarterback Cody Trickett makes a mistake. Throws the football on the sidelines, probably should have thrown it away. Paul Dawson lurking in the shadows, makes a mistake, he picks it off, gets 2 feet in bounds. Texas Christian football, they end up winning that football game like 45-44 in a thriller. It was his play that forced the turnover, changed the whole complexion of the game. They ended up winning. He is a bona fide playmaker. You go to this 2014 season and this thing was phenomenal. Let's just break down some of the numbers from his 2014 campaign. 136 tackles, tackling machine, 20 of those for losses. So the instincts is key in that stat. He plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. 6 sacks. I told you he's a playmaker. So he's a guy that just doesn't tackle people, but he gets to the quarterback when he blitzes effectively. 6 sacks on the season, 4 interceptions, 1 of those for a touchdown. I just told you that 1 touchdown being against Oklahoma. A lot of key pivotal plays for his team. 4 interceptions, again, lends itself to him being a playmaker. 2 forced fumbles, again, playmaker, playmaker, playmaker. His cons. 4.93 at the combine, I've already spoken about that. He cleaned it up and made it a 4.76 at his pro day. Still not blazing fast, which is why he's here in the 3rd round. I already told you, the guy has everything you're looking for. His size, he's undersized at 6 feet, 235, but that's the way the league is going, so I don't even mention that anymore. But 4.76 is slow for the linebacker position. That's why he's here in the 3rd round. If he was faster, he'd be a 2nd round pick or a 1st round pick. He's got that kind of talent. He doesn't stack and shed well. Remember I said early on that he was able to avoid and slip blockers, but I didn't say he stacked and shed well. That's because he doesn't. He's undersized at 235 and 6 feet tall. I saw offensive linemen get a hold of him, and when he wasn't able to avoid them or slip them, and they actually got 2 hands on him, they were driving him out of the play. So he's not a guy that's going to stand up at the point of attack with a 315-pound offensive lineman, stack him up, and then shed him when the ball carrier comes. He's looking to avoid them altogether and get to the ball, which he does a really good job of. But when they get their hands on him, he's not a guy that's going to stack that offensive lineman, then discard him and get to the football. That's not in his arsenal. At the end of the day, he reminds me of Vontaze Burfict. Eerily similar here. I remember Mike Mayock saying that this guy, not Paul Dawson, but Vontaze Burfict, was undraftable, and he went undrafted. And Cincinnati gave him an opportunity, and we see what he's manifested himself into as a football player. He's blossomed. A lot of people talked about Vontaze Burfict's lack of speed coming out of Arizona State, and that was not a guess. That was legit. That wasn't people making an assumption. This guy was slow coming out of Arizona State. Well, Paul Dawson has the same issue, but doesn't take away from the fact that much like Vontaze Burfict, this is a football player. This guy makes plays. You want him on your team. Cincinnati Bengals go out and get another good quality football player in the 3rd round, 99th overall selection, inside linebacker out of TCU. Paul Dawson for me is a triple. If this guy had any kind of speed, he'd be a home run, no doubt about it. But the lack of top end speed is going to bite him at the next level, I believe. We'll see though. I mean, instincts makes up for so many other areas. If you're not the fastest guy in the world, but you've got instincts, you're going to win on most snaps. He has that, so we'll see what happens with Paul Dawson. You go to the 4th round now, 120th overall selection. Cornerback out of USC, Josh Shaw is the pick. 6 foot, 201-pound cornerback. We know about his saga. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but let's talk about Josh Shaw, the football player. Moves well, 4.4, 440 speed, so you're talking about a Moses Malone 40. And so yeah, he can run. He's physical, he tackles. Those are the next 2 pros. Go ahead and lump them together. He's a physical football player. This kind of goes back to the versatility that he has shown throughout his collegiate career. At one point, he was a safety. He played safety and corner in the same season. Had about 7 starts at safety, then moved to corner. So guy with a lot of versatility, and he plays with the physicality of a safety, comes up and run support tackles. So I like that about his game. He's a guy that's going to come in and mix it up and gives you some versatility. So I knocked out another pro because versatility was one of his final pros. So he's a versatile football player, can play cornerback, can play safety, physical, he tackles. Lot to like there if you're talking about a guy that's going to help you on special teams and be able to help you in different sets along your defense. And so he's comfortable using different techniques. That's his final pro. This is a guy that I was impressed with because in 2014, I remember, he was suspended. USC suspended him for the first 7 games of the season. He ended up playing in the final 4 contests of the season. And so you really had to go back to 2013 to watch some good tape on him. And then I had to scrounge up some end of the season tape to see what he was doing as he worked his way back from the suspension. And no matter what, the one thing that didn't change with him is he never lacked for confidence. He came back, first game back, and he's getting in guys' grill up here at the line of scrimmage. Now, it wasn't always straight press. He was coming up in there facing them and then bailing at the snap, but it doesn't matter. Press and bail, actual man-to-man press coverage, off 7, 10 yards, whatever. He was comfortable in any of those different techniques. And so I like the fact that this guy is versatile in being able to come up, press, because he's got the confidence, he's got the speed. I hate when guys have the athleticism and the length necessary to come up in a guy's face. So what, you don't get the jam off correctly. You got the length and the speed to make up for having a lost step or two. Go ahead and get in the guy's face and challenge him. And if you can't get off the jam properly, then then back off then. Then you get in his face and press and bail. And don't put your hands on him and just bail off the line of scrimmage that way. But I like that he gives different looks pre-snap to the quarterback so that it's not an easy pitch and catch for the quarterback and receiver. And I talked about his size at 6 foot. That's the new NFL. Corners need to be longer in order to deal with these bigger receivers. Josh Shaw has that. We go to his cons. He can be flat-footed at times. And a lot of times it happens. I think he has that safety mentality sometimes when he's playing off. He'll be 10 yards off the ball, standing at an angle like this, and he'll be watching the quarterback, watching the receiver, and the receiver will eat up his cushion, and then he'll start to rev up the engine. It's too late. Even and you're leaving. That's the rule. That receiver, guy runs the post. Josh Shaw is nowhere to be found. Luckily enough for him, the Utah quarterback could not put the football on the money, or else it was a 25-yard touchdown pass, and it should have been. He was wide open. Quarterback missed him, but Josh Shaw was flat-footed on the play. That can happen to him from time to time, and it only happens when he's in off coverage. And again, I think that's when that safety mechanism, because normally when you're a safety, you're off the ball by about 15, 20 yards. You've got plenty of space to react. You don't have to get the feet moving as fast as you do when you're at corner. And so, and then you could also say he was trying to be nosy, greedy, and wanted to jump a route. That's always prevalent as well. But I think it was more because he was just in no man's land. He was spaced out, looking at the quarterback, allowed the guy to eat up his cushion, flat-footed. I don't think he was actually squatting on the route. I think he just got beat. He was being nosy and he got beat, and that happens. But he got to clean that up. You look at his last con, of course, this is the big one here. Let's talk about this quickly. Suspended for lying to officials about him having 2 injured ankles. He jumps out of a window. The initial story was to save his nephew who was drowning, and everybody ate it up. It was a big story and everybody was praising him. But then a lot of the surrounding stories or little miniature details about the story didn't add up. Things started to really get murky. People started poking holes in his alibi, and all of a sudden the truth came to light. He was with his girlfriend. He jumped out of the window. Someone called the police because they heard a domestic dispute. Don't know if anything actually happened. Maybe they were just yelling at one another. At the end of the day, police show up. He gets scared, jumps out of the window, and he hurts his ankles. Tried to cover it up with the story. It got out of control, way out of control, took on a life of its own. He ended up getting suspended for 7 games at USC. So the moral of the story is, don't lie. And I tell my kids this all the time. The actual cover-up is what gets you in trouble. The cover-up, the punishment for the cover-up is usually worse than the actual punishment for the crime itself. So in my estimation, this could have all been avoided if he would have just stuck it out. And maybe something was going on there that shouldn't have been going on and he didn't want to stick around for it. I get it, I understand. But at the same time, lying about it only made the situation worse. And from all accounts, he's a good kid, which is probably why USC didn't suspend him for the entire year and dismiss him from the football team. He's a really good kid, good head on his shoulders, never done anything wrong prior to this. They said he was the last person they thought would be involved in something like this. So I'm glad that this is starting to get behind him. Let's see if he can't play football for the Cincinnati Bengals. In the 4th round, 120th overall selection, cornerback out of USC, really defensive back. This guy's versatile. Josh Shaw is a double. Comes in, gives you some size, some tackling ability, will play special teams, do a number of things to help you right away. You go to your next 4th round pick, 135th overall defensive end out of Arizona State, Marcus Hardison is the pick. This guy, you know what? He really changed my mind. The more tape I watched on him, the more sold I became, because initially I was not impressed with Marcus Hardison. As I continued to watch more and more and more tape on him, he won me over, and I was blown away by what he was able to produce in 2014. 6'3", 307-pound football player, and I said he was a defensive end. I think he's going to play defensive tackle. They're looking at him as a Geno Atkins replacement, a Geno Atkins clone. They want this guy to come in and be what Geno Atkins was pre-ACL tear. They want this guy to be a 10.5 sack guy, wreaking havoc, because Cincinnati, their biggest fault last year, their biggest deficiency was lack of pressure on the quarterback. And so if you can get a guy like this on the interior of your defensive line to get pressure, and guys start getting pressure on the outsides, you got something, and this guy can provide that for you. Let's jump into some more of his pros. He's an athlete. That's the first thing I want you to know about this guy. At 307 pounds, 4.70 40 guy. Yikes. Okay, he's flying, man. I'm talking, I told you your tight end Tyler Kroft was 4'6'7". All right, he's 246 pounds. This guy's 307 pounds, 4'7" flat, flying. Okay, so right off the bat, you're dealing with an athlete. He's aggressive on stunts and counters. That's the next pro. He ran a bunch of stunts and twists, tackle ends, twists and stunts, and he did a lot of winning. Those were the first times that I saw a trace of athleticism and the ability to win, was on these twisted stunts. Because early on, I'm saying this guy doesn't have a plan. He's just going up the field. He's not winning. I wasn't impressed at all. I was like, really don't like this pick in the 4th round. I'm not liking it. And as I continue to watch more and more tape, I started seeing him win on twists and stunts and using the athleticism and quickness. When he peels around, he's too quick for the guard to respond and rebound off of that. And there was a lot to like when he was twisting and stunting. This guy was dynamic in getting into the backfield and making plays. Also, he counters very well. There was one time he countered, and he's a guy that'll go up the field and then use a club, a Reggie White club, and knock a guy out of the way. Or the one that I saw that was beautiful that opened my eyes, and I was like, man, that's impressive, because I hadn't seen him pull one of these out the entire time. He goes up the field hard, offensive line, and opens up his hips to the outside. He puts on a gorgeous Dwight Freeney-esque spin. Boom! I mean, the pivot was beautiful. It was quick. It wasn't lethargic. It wasn't in the same spot. He spun up the field, sack. It was gorgeous. And so that let me know he's got a bag of tricks. He's got some tools in there. He doesn't pull them out as often as I would like him to, but he's got some tools in there. His counters are just as good as when he twists and stunts. So that's something that I think he does extremely well, is twist and stunts and his counters. He doesn't always win with the first move, but that counter is usually right there getting the job done. He uses his hands well, and that's something that I think he does really well, is he uses his hands, and his hands are the reason why he wins. A lot of time he gets his hands on guys and he's able to redirect them, get to the quarterback, get to the running back, get in the backfield, make a tackle. Stacks and sheds very well. His hands are the reason why he's able to do that. He's aware. He's not always going to get to the quarterback, and he understands that, so he gets his hands up. He deflected some passes, and I'll talk about his 2014 stats because they were amazing. But he deflected some passes, and Demarius Randall, who went in the 1st round out of Arizona State to the Green Bay Packers, was the beneficiary of 2 of his deflections. Both of them interceptions. Both of them ended up being, well, one of them ended up being a pick 6. And so this guy is very aware. If he's not getting to the quarterback, he's going to get his hands up and try to make something happen that way. Plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. I mean, he's always in the backfield. And his aggression, his ability to displace offensive linemen, the quickness, the athleticism, the counters, the twists, the stunts. There's so much here. And so let me just go to him being a playmaker. That's the next pro. And everything I've already mentioned, you see with the numbers, the awareness, playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage, being aggressive, being an athlete. Let's go to his stats from 2014, because he's a playmaker, and that's the next pro. 10 sacks a season ago, so he's getting to the quarterback from the defensive tackle position. He was all over that defensive line. end, tackle, you name it, he's there. So I don't want to just put him in the box and say he's a defensive end because I think he's going to play defensive tackle at the next level. And his quickness against guards and centers is going to win him out more so than not. 15 tackles for loss. So he's in the backfield, he's making plays. And to me, there were even more opportunities for tackles for loss and he just missed. And we'll talk about that later on. He could have easily had 20, 22 tackles for losses. Instead he only got 15 and that's still a lot. 2 interceptions. There was one interception versus, I want to say Notre Dame. And this, it was so nice I had to rewind it and watch it twice, okay? So the ball is deflected by one of his teammates up into the air. And all of a sudden, I see a 6'3", 307-pound man jump in the air like he's 6'5", 210 pounds, like he's going up to dunk a rebound. This guy skies into the air, stretches his arms out, snatches the football, and catches it and falls on the ground. One smooth motion. I said, no way that's him, because he didn't even look like the same guy. It looked like somebody totally different because it was so athletic. I rewinded and I'm like, sure enough, man, that's number 1, man. My goodness, that's ridiculous. Guy's athletic, 2 interceptions. He's a ball player. 2 pass deflections, I already mentioned those. Those ended up turning into interceptions. And 3 forced fumbles on the season. So the guy is a playmaker, okay? He makes plays. He's a handful to deal with around the line of scrimmage. He's gonna be a problematic guy at the next level for the AFC North to deal with. He's a 3-down player. I just told you he had 10 sacks last year. He can get in the backfield. He can be on the football field first, second, and third down. He's a 3-down football player. You go to his cons. He missed a bunch of tackles, and he's a slinger. He's not a guy that's gonna come up and plant a guy into the ground. He grabs you around the waist and swings you around and drags you until you fall down. He's a slanger. But it doesn't matter, he gets you on the ground, but he misses a bunch of tackles, man. I saw him miss too many tackles. I'm like, dude, you could have had many more tackles for losses. You could have had a lot more stops on the season if you would have just got guys on the ground. He misses way too many tackles for my liking. He needs to tighten that up because he did miss a bunch of tackles on tape. Needs to develop a rush plan. He doesn't have anything in mind. When he goes up the field, he just reacts to what the offensive lineman in front of him is doing. And that's not the way to go about it. You can set guys up by doing things, you know, doing something 3 times in a row and then say, all right, he's expecting this, now I can go inside because I've been going outside all game long. Oh, he's leaning outside, he's putting all his weight on that outside foot, so now I can spin back inside and beat him with a spin move. You gotta set guys up. I say this all the time. Being a defensive end, outside linebacker, anybody that's trying to get to a quarterback, it's just as mental as it is physical. You got to be able to win that mental game as well as the physical game. He needs to develop a pass rushing plan when going after the quarterback. 1-year wonder. That's my last con, and it's also a question. Is he a 1-year wonder? Because none of his other seasons at Arizona State looked anything remotely close to what he did in 2014. Did the light bulb finally come on? Or did he just perform like a guy in a contract season so he could get drafted, make some extra money, and that's not who he really is as a football player? I don't know. Stay tuned. But all I know is with that kind of athleticism, that size, this guy's a problem. And in the 4th round, 135th overall selection, defensive end out of Arizona State, Marcus Hardison is a triple. This kid is a football player. I love what he brings to the table. Can't wait to see if he's able to grow in this Cincinnati Bengals program. You go to the 5th round, 157th overall selection, tight end out of Auburn, C.J. Uzomah is the pick. Look, I look at the Bengals like I look at the Carolina Panthers with linebackers. How many tight ends do you possibly need on your team? Yes, I know Jermaine Gresham is gone, okay? How many tight ends do you need, really? I mean, seriously, what are we doing here? Okay, is he the best player on the board? Maybe for you. I don't know. I can't answer that. And I'm never a guy that's going to go against a team for going out and getting their guy that's who was the highest on their board. But my goodness, how many tight ends you need? Let's go to his pros. 6'5", 263-pound tight end. Next pro, athlete, 4'6", 240, faster than Tyler Kroft. Doesn't have the type of production that Tyler Kroft has. Isn't the greatest of route runner as a Tyler Kroft is. But he's an athlete nonetheless. With that size, you can do something with that frame. Next pro, long-framed receiver. I just mentioned that. Large catch radius. You saw it from time to time at Alabama, especially in 2013, or excuse me, at Auburn. Gets Alabama. They threw him the football in the corner of the end zone, had to stretch away from his frame to catch it. Beautiful catch. He can do that. He was a big catalyst in 2013 on their way to the national championship game. So he can do some things. Long frame allows him to catch outside of his frame, which is another one of his pros. So I went ahead and lumped those two together. He's got good hands. You're throwing the football, I think he's a guy that you can rely on to catch the football. I didn't see any drops on tape. He didn't get the football enough at Auburn, but that was through no fault of his own. He just didn't get the football. When you got rushing quarterbacks like a Nick Marshall, these guys tend to omit the tight end often, even though he may be open on the play. Saw the same thing out of Dak Prescott with his tight end, who I thought Malcolm Johnson was a beast at Mississippi State. Didn't get the football enough because he's got a scrambling quarterback back there that will take off and run instead of surveying the field, going through his progressions and finding the tight end. C.J. Uzomah was a byproduct of his environment, and so he didn't have a lot of production, but that's not any fault of his own. He can catch the football. He's versatile. They flexed him all over the place. He was out wide in the slot, lined up in line, in the backfield, you name it, sent him in motion. He was all over the place. He was all over the field at Auburn. Go to his cons. Pedestrian production for his collegiate career. 29 catches, 435 yards, and only 7 touchdowns in a 4-year career. Again, not all of that is his fault. You got options, and really, he didn't play right away, of course, as it normally goes in college. Guys are in front of you. Finally gets his opportunity, and then you got Nick Marshall at quarterback, a guy that's not surveying the field, that's always looking deep for Sammy Coates and Duke Williams. So you're not getting the football a lot. So I don't want to beat him up, but hey, it is what it is. 29 catches, not a lot for a guy at school for 4 years. Subpar blocker as well. He's not going to wow you with his ability to block. He needs to work on that tremendously. And I think that's where Tyler Kroft separates himself, while C.J. Uzomah is a 5th rounder and Tyler Kroft is a 3rd rounder. But in the 5th round, 157th overall selection, tight end out of Auburn, C.J. Uzomah is a double. Solid football player, has some things he has to work on, but I think he gives you some more value in the 5th round. As if you needed any more tight ends, you add him to the mix. So we move on to the 6th round, 197th overall selection, safety out of Fresno State. Derron Smith is the selection. Pros, 5'10", 200-pound safety. He is interchangeable. That's the next pro, and I talk about this all the time, how you have to be able to play a little bit of free as well as strong in today's NFL. No longer can you be just a box safety. No longer can you just be a safety that plays 35 yards off the ball but can't tackle. The designations are becoming blurred now in the league. Now, you're going to see some guys that are primarily box safeties. You're going to see guys that are better in coverage than they are tacklers, but there needs to be some type of balance. Normally, if you're going to excel at the next level, you need to be able to do a little bit of both. This guy can do both of them very well. He's a physical tackler. He is a guy that can provide a little bit of enforcement in your secondary. And you know, in this day and age in the National Football League, being an enforcer really isn't something to be proud of anymore, because you can't get away with the things you used to be able to get away with back in the day. You can't hit guys, you can't really scare guys across the middle of the field. Defenseless receiver penalties are being called at an alarming rate. And so you've really been handcuffed if you're a safety that likes to be aggressive and really let guys know that they're not going to be catching the football over the middle of the field. You really have been restricted in what you can and can't do as a safety. And really, it's been for the best, because again, we know about concussions and all of those things and how they affect these players long term and down the road. So I'm not against it, but it does take away from what a safety can do and how aggressive they can be. But this guy still is physical despite all of the rule changes, even in the college game where they have targeting and you can be ejected and miss the first half of the next game. It is ridiculous, and those targeting calls can change the outcome of a game. To me, I can't stand the targeting call in college, but he's a guy that is physical nonetheless as a tackler. True last line of defense, and to me, this is one of the most underrated parts of being a free safety, because we talk about needing to be able to do a little bit of both, but you need to be able to tackle and be a formed, solid tackler and get guys on the ground, because as a Redskins fan, I watched Bakari Rambo, a guy with all the talent in the world, come into the league, and I was excited because the Redskins were hurting at the safety position. This guy can make plays, can go after the football, but he was not that good at tackling. He was the last line of defense. As a free safety, your job is to play 20, 25, 30 yards off the football. And if someone comes near you, you need to make the tackle because there is no one else behind you. If you miss, it's a touchdown. And that was something that us Redskins fans found out the hard way. If you're the true last line of defense, you need to get guys on the ground. That's why you're called a safety. Because you are the safety net of the defense. If everything else breaks down and someone comes your way with the football, you have to make the tackle or else. And so this guy's a true last line of defense. As a safety, you can feel good about Derron Smith being the last line of defense in your defense. He's going to get the ball carrier on the ground. Saw him make a few, maybe even about 5 or 6 tackles that save some touchdowns, so he is a true last line of defense. Heavy collegiate production. His time at Fresno State was very, very productive. Over 300 tackles in his collegiate career. So again, I just told you he was a good tackler and he gets guys on the ground. That's evidence of it right there. He's a playmaker, and that's his last or one of his last pros, and I'll go ahead and lump the last one in there as well. Special teams value. If he's going to make this team as a 6th round pick, going to have to provide special teams value, and he was good at it at Fresno State, so I don't see why he can't come into the league and understand that if I'm going to make this team as a 6th round safety, I need to be one of the best on special teams, and I think he'll do that at the next level. But let's talk about him being a playmaker. And this is a guy that at Fresno State was probably their best player on the team last year in 2014. Of course, the year prior, Devontae Adams was there, and so was the quarterback Derek Carr. So he was not the best player last year, but after those two departed, I think he was the best player on their team last season. And so 15 career interceptions, 26 pass deflections, and 2 touchdowns off of those interceptions. So this guy's making plays, he's getting his hands on footballs. And so you understand why this guy was a draft pick in this year's draft. He is able to get the job done and make some plays in some of the most dire situations. They were getting blown out in that bowl game against USC a couple years back, Derek Carr's last game. And he makes an interception, a pick 6, takes it to the crib. Gives them hope in a game where it looked like they were going to be just absolutely blown to smithereens. They actually ended up getting blown out, but for that brief period, they cut the lead to a 2-score game, and it also gave them a little bit of momentum. They later on relinquished that momentum, ended up losing the game in big blowout fashion, but he's the type of guy that makes plays, that gives his team a chance. You go to his cons, he's usually a step late. And it's crazy because even though he's a step late, that was actually a lot of times to his benefit in college. You would see this guy trailing on a play, one of his teammates would get a deflection, ball would tip it to the air, and because he was a step late, he'd be right there, Johnny on the spot for an interception. A lot of times it actually benefited him being a step late. At least 3 of the interceptions that I saw on tape, he was able to corral because he was late to the party. Had he been on time, he wouldn't have been in the right spot to catch the football. So he's one of those guys that just happens to be in the right spot at the right time. But again, if you're late, a lot of times you're going to pay for being late. And at the next level, where quarterbacks generally don't make a lot of mistakes that the quarterbacks in college were making that allow guys to get their hands on footballs, he's probably going to have to pay the price for being late to the party. Why is he always late? Lacks elite speed. He's a 4'6", 140 guy. Now that's not tremendously slow, but it's not game-changing speed either. So he's a guy that can make some plays, but he does not have the type of speed that is going to wow you at the next level. And last but not least, 2011, he had a broken arm. It hasn't affected him in the least. Just needed to mention that because, again, anytime you break something, it needs mentioning, okay? It bears mentioning. So 2011 broken arm. He's played some really good football since then, so I'm not worried about it, and neither should you. But at the end of the day, 6th round, 197th overall selection, safety out of Fresno State. Derron Smith for me is a double. Gives you some special teams value, a guy that can come in, fill up your depth chart, and In a pinch, I think you can put this guy out there and feel good about what he can bring to the table. I think this is a good, solid selection in the later rounds of the draft. And finally, you end your draft in the 7th round, 238th overall selection, wide receiver out of West Virginia. Mario Alford is the selection, aka Super Mario. There can only be one Super Mario. He's already here in the NFL. He resides in Buffalo, so won't call him Super Mario. He's going to have to come up with a new nickname. But nonetheless, this guy, for his size, plays big. And so, let's talk about what he brings to the table. 5'8", 180-pound receiver. So right there, that tells you this is a guy with should have a lot of speed. A, B, he's going to have to play in the slot. So he's an explosive track guy. That's the next pro. 4'4", 340. And honestly speaking, on game days, it looks a lot faster than that. It wouldn't surprise me that at top speed, this guy's running a sub 4.40. He just looks the part of a guy running a 4.37, a 4.39. It would not surprise me if on game day he's a little bit faster than his time speed, but nonetheless, you're talking about an explosive track guy that can get behind the defense and take the lid and the top off of the defense. Will compete for the football. I saw on numerous occasions down the field, he would go up for the football, one-on-one coverage, quarterback would throw the football up and allow him to compete for it, and he would come down with it. Guy was making some plays, and it's funny, I say that he's explosive because this is a guy that on tape looks the part of a 4.43 athlete, and there are other guys where you see him. I was just talking about a Tennessee receiver, Trey McBride out of William & Mary. He ran a 4.4 140, which is faster than 4.43, but he doesn't look like it on game day. So this guy's explosive. He'll compete for the football despite his diminutive stature at 5'8". You throw the football just like a Steve Smith. He's going up, climbing the ladder, and trying to come down with the football. Doesn't play with the veracity of a Steve Smith, but he will climb the ladder like a Steve Smith and try to come down with jump balls down the field. He is a playmaker. He makes big plays. It's just what this guy does. And so you look at what he was able to provide. Let's lump the next two pros together. Big plays, playmaker, and special teams value. To me, that's part of the mystique and the lore and the attraction that is Mario Alford. If you're drafting this guy, you're drafting him not because of what he does at the wide receiver position alone, but what he also brings in special teams value. 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns in 2014. You can also put him back there on punt returns. This guy is dynamic with the football in his hands. He's dynamic out in space, and he's just a flat-out athlete, so you want guys like this on your team. You go to his last con, he's a slot receiver. And I think in this league, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll say it till my face turns blue. You want to win on third downs, you need a really good slot receiver. You need a guy that you can throw the football to that can win one-on-one matchups in the slot, undress corners that are slot corners, undress safeties, undress linebackers, win those matchups consistently, get open, find the hole in the zone coverage, and sit down, catch the football, make the tough catches, go over the middle of the field when necessary, do all of the little things on third downs to extend drives. You extend possessions, you score points, you win football games. The slot receiver is huge in the National Football League. Whether you put a tight end in the slot or you take a small guy like Mario Alford and put him in the slot position has never been more important in the league than it is now. So you need guys like this on your team. You want to ask me what this guy is? To me, he's the replacement for Andrew Hawkins. You were missing that guy last year. And you were missing some of everybody at receiver last year. It was ugly last year. AJ Green went down for a period. It was bad. Remember the playoff game last year? Rex Burkhead was starting at receiver last year. It was that bad for you at receiver. At one time, there was no one left at receiver but Mohamed Sanu. It was really bad. Marvin Jones was basically gone for the entire year. You were dealing with injuries at the tight end position. It was bad last year. So this guy's going to come in, and I fully expect him as a 7th round pick to make this team as long as he stays healthy, shows the ability to make plays like he did at West Virginia. Don't see why this guy's not going to make the team. Finally, his concentration drops, and the first tape that I watched kind of made me say, man, he's got to be better, but I didn't really see as many drops as I continued on tape. But that first tape that I watched against Oklahoma, there were some drops. in that game, wide open, got to catch it. He didn't. But then as I continued to watch more and more tapes, I felt somewhat satisfied with what I saw, but still, there are situations where he will drop the football. He's looking to make a play before he catches it. Just catch the football. This isn't a situation of a guy that doesn't have good hands. Just catch the football. And he's a non-factor as a blocker, which I don't really have to explain to you. 5'8", 180. I mean, who are you blocking at that size? You're going to have some guys that's going to compete at that size, but still, 5'8", 180 is 5'8", 180. It is what it is. And so, at the end of the day, though, 238th overall selection, wide receiver out of West Virginia, Mario Alford for me is a double. This is some good value in the 7th round because this is a guy that comes in day one and carves out a niche for himself. On special teams, you can take Brandon Tate off of kickoff return. I'm tired of seeing Brandon Tate back there, okay? So you can take him off of kickoff returns. You can stick this guy back there. You can also put him back on punt returns as well and give you a spark there. And then he can also double as a wide receiver. You can find ways to give him the football, jet sweeps and gadgety plays. This is a guy that you want to just get the football in his hands because he's explosive. I think he's going to make this roster if he stays healthy and picks up the Cincinnati Bengals playbook. And so that is the Cincinnati Bengals draft in a nutshell. 9 selections in all. Let's jump into their score and see how they were able to fare in this draft. First round and second round home runs to start off the draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. Then you have 2 triples throughout the draft, so more value for this Cincinnati Bengals football team. And then you finish up the draft with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doubles, which nets you an additional 3 doubles, which ends up being a 30 when it's all said and done. You divide by 9, and it is a 3.3 triple for the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2015 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. That's going to do it for their draft, and it's going to do it for me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League season. Next time. Getting very close to the end. Who's next? There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at @InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In the Lab Room. That's In the Lab Room on Facebook and at In the Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.